Hi everyone, this is James, and today we're going to be talking about explicitness, which is one of the clarity concepts covered in Saphier. So there are four categories of clarity concepts. The one we're focusing on for this explicitness video is creating mental engagement. This is where explicitness lives. This is essentially cognitive tools that connect students with their learning and avoiding obstacles to access. So explicitness is broken down by Saphier into four behaviors: intentions of cues, focus of questions, necessary steps and directions, and meaning of references. The thing to remember about explicitness is that it is an invisible skill. If you are doing it right, no one's going to notice. And if you're doing it wrong, it's going to be very obvious because people are going to be confused. They're going to have gaps in their understanding, and that's going to become very obvious in class participation as well as in tests and so on and so forth. So the first behavior is intentions of cues. The keyword here is actually intentions, not so much cues, because cues can be questions, they can be statements, they can be exercises, and this has a great deal of overlap with the second behavior, which we'll get to in a minute. But essentially, you want the students to be able to trust that what they are doing is important to their learning, that by answering this question, by doing this exercise, by following this line of thinking, that they're going to get somewhere worthwhile. You don't want any gaps here. You don't want them trying to guess why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you asking them about where bears live? Well, you're trying to get to a point, and with explicitness, you can make that point clear and still walk them down the path and help them get there. The focus of questions is the second behavior, and the key here is actually really answers rather than questions. Though obviously you need to know how to ask a question explicitly. You need to be obvious about the why of your question. If you're asking a question that is broad, that has many answers, you want to be sure that you're making clear what kind of answers you're looking for by being specific about what type of question you're asking. Sucker questions, for example. Sucker questions are questions that have many, many answers, but you're only looking for one or maybe two, basically a small subset of those answers. And those can be useful if you can incorporate all of the infinite other answers that are possible for these sucker questions. But if you are just looking for one, think of a better way to ask that might get students closer to the point quicker. And if you're going to ask questions in series, like, for example, what happened? Why did we join the War of 1812? Well, what was going on in Europe at the time? Stuff like that. You need to make sure that the questions are still focused on the same subject, that you haven't led their train of thought someplace else entirely in order to try and get them back on track. You want to stay on the same track the whole time. Necessary steps and directions, the third behavior. This one is pretty clear, but it can also be one of the most damaging if you get it wrong. If there are certain steps that students need to take in order to arrive at the right answer or present the right answer or both, you need to make sure that you are being very explicit in what you need or what they need to succeed. Using partial models, that is what we saw in transitions from direct instruction to guided practice. Show them what they're supposed to be doing and then let them do it. Specific language. Students have their own vocabulary for understanding assignments. Remember, say the words compare and contrast. To this day, we still know what somebody means when they ask us to compare and contrast things. Use that vocabulary, use that specific language in order to get the right response from students. And the last behavior, meaning of references, this is probably the most forgivable one. If you make a reference to something while you are instructing, whether it's to mythology or pop culture or some other unit that you've talked about, if the students don't get the reference, explain it to them. Not only will you be helping with their education with the topic at hand, but if it's something like Greek mythology, that's an opportunity to educate them, to make a connection to something else. And that in and of itself shows why they're learning this, because it has multiple connections to things that maybe they're not even thinking about right now. And really, as a final thought, that is the core of explicitness, that when you make a if you make a mistake with explicitness when you're presenting to a class, just explain it. Just be more explicit. If you get the question, if you misphrase a question and the students don't understand it, simply go back and rephrase the question. Ask the students to reconsider the question with the new phrasing. It will avoid the students feeling embarrassed or upset. And really, those kinds of emotions are just going to get in the way of education. And we as educators have a responsibility not to allow students to lose that connection, to lose that mental engagement. So I hope everyone enjoyed that. That is it for this week's video, and I will see you all later.